Today in the shop, we're going to start building a set of turbo headers for our Pro Street G-body. What's up guys? We're back in the shop and today we're going to start on a set of turbo headers for our Pro Street G-body. Originally, I planned on using a set of LS turbo headers and swapping the flange with an LT flange. Unfortunately, when I measured, I didn't account for our motor plate tabs, which ended up right in the way, so we get to make our own. The first step in this process is to bolt anything and everything onto the engine that might be in the way. Knock sensors, steering shaft, the dipstick, anything that might be in the way, we need to know where all these things end up so that we can work around them. Once everything's installed on the engine, we can get the motor plates out of the way and get our collectors temporarily mounted where we want them. Let's get started. So this block has been filled with hard block. If you didn't catch that, go back and watch the LT1 engine build episode. And because of that, most likely we're gonna have some issues with oil temperatures. So I'm replacing this oil block with an improved racing oil block. It has plumbing for an oil cooler and a built-in thermostat so that the oil can come up to temperature. So this dipstick is out of a GM truck application. I felt like that was a better fit based on the way the dipstick was bent. I did have to come up with my own mounting solution, and I'll have to remove the factory mounting solution since they typically use the valve cover in stock form, and obviously we can't do that. It worked, I had to bend it a little bit, but I think it'll work. Knock sensors are fairly straightforward. These are actually universal from the LS to the LT. I did install the TRZ steering column and I did mark where the steering shaft was, even though it's not shown in the video. So the motor plates are out of the way, and I'm just using some scrap laid across the front K-member here, and I'm clamping the collectors to that scrap piece. I've marked it to make sure it's even on both sides, and I just have the collectors mounted using a hose clamp, a piece of scrap metal, and then a C-clamp. This gives a ton of adjustment, and you can play with it and get everything dialed in, both vertically and side to side and front to back. Everything that could possibly be in our way is installed on the engine and the collectors are locked in place, so it's time to start mocking up the primary tubes. Now I have a pretty good idea how these tubes are going to be routed, but before I ever pick up a single tube, I'm going to mock everything up with this kit from Ice Engine Works. These are basically header building Legos. They just snap together, they come in all the different sizes and bend radii, and they save a ton of time and material by being able to lay out the entire header first. So I'm going to lay out the passenger side, then we can cut up some tubes and transfer it to stainless. So the Ice Engine Works kit, each piece has a little arrow indicator on it, and anytime those arrows don't align from block to block, that's where you need to make a cut. However, in order to do that, you either need their proprietary tool or some way to mark your materials. So what I'm doing here is I'm laying out 2-inch, 3-inch, and 4-inch center line radiuses, 180-degree bends, and we're going to mark where the end of each piece is. We're also going to mark all of the vertical legs. So what I can do is I can take the 180s that I've bought, lay them on top of this drawing, and mark the lines before I head over to the saw. Now, side note, this part right here did not work. This is cutting on the same cut line for all 3 radius, which you can see if you pay attention to the drawing on my workbench later in the video. This kit is really easy to use, just takes a little bit of trial and error. These pieces literally snap together. They use a compression fitting to hold them into the flange. My favorite part about it is, you can redo a primary a dozen times and you're not out any material and you're really not out a ton of time either. So as you can see, I'm marking all of my cuts on the 180s using that reference chart that I drew on the workbench. Now, these are all 2-inch, 3-inch, and 4-inch centerline 180s. They are 1 3/4 stainless steel tubing, and that tubing is from JMD Tubes. JMD Tubes had the best pricing for the materials, and their standard shipping was like next day, or might have even been overnight. We're also using header flanges and collectors from Motion Raceworks. Here you can get a better shot of the different cut lines for the various radii. I didn't make it very far before I realized that the fit up using the vertical bandsaw is not that hot. So I grabbed this benchtop grinder from Buck Tool. This thing was super inexpensive. It was the same price as a Harbor Freight knockoff, but it's direct drive and it's a beast. I can literally jam material into it if I wanted to, and it does not even slow down. Another thing you notice is the clamp that I have here, and it's designed to clamp 2 pieces of tube together so you can weld them. On 2 straight pieces of tube, it works great, but on a bend, especially a tight bend like we're doing for a header, it doesn't really work that well. You'll see me use it here on this header, but it didn't last very long before I banded it. As I'm taping this piece together, I'm trying to make it as close to my mock-up piece as I can, but what you don't see is that off camera I'm going back and forth to the car to double check the fitment to make sure that everything lines up the way that it's supposed to. you'll notice as I'm taking this apart and I'm making my alignment marks with the Sharpies, I'm using two different colors. The reason I do that is I always keep the green mark on the left, so that way I know when I'm putting this back together for welding, which way the piece was oriented, and I don't end up trying to put one in backwards or upside down. The passenger side primaries are all fit up. They're just tacked in place so we can check the fit up on the entire header before we weld them fully. Now this is the first time I've built a set of headers and the first time I've used the kit from Ice Engine Works, and I feel like it makes the whole thing very simple. We need to repeat that entire process for the driver's side, but before we do, I want to let you guys know that we just got a fresh batch of shirts in, so all sizes are back in stock. Help us keep videos coming your way. Grab yours right now on our website, recklessregal.com. Will you guys do that? I'm gonna go knock out this driver's side header. So between doing the passenger side header and the driver's side header, over a month went by, strictly because I had so many problems and there's such a learning curve doing this for the first time. Mostly with the fabrication side of it, getting the bends just right, getting the welds just right, getting the fit up just right. So you'll notice here quite a few changes. I ended up picking up a Certiflat fabrication table. I switched to a different welder. Instead of using my Miller lift arc, I switched over to an AHP that has a high frequency start. Also noticed probably a couple different camera angles because the camera was actually getting in my way here. So you'll notice a couple bird's eye views as we go through this fabrication process. So all I'm doing here is just counting the number of pieces I have and the bend that I have in my mock-up, and then marking those same pieces to be cut out of stainless. And then we take it over to the bandsaw, cut everything out, take it back to the benchtop grinder, make sure it's flat, deburr it, round off the edge so we have a little bit of a chamfer, and then tack it together. It's pretty straightforward stuff, it's pretty repetitive stuff. Once you get the hang of it, it goes pretty quick. So you notice that I'm not using the clamp anymore. I have the fab table set up. What you see here, if you look really closely, is these pieces are held together with polyethylene tape. It's also called PET tape for short. It's a high temperature tape that doesn't gum up or leave any type of residue behind when you have the heat from welding. I love 1, 2, 3 blocks. You can see here I'm using them just to keep the piece from rolling around. I've also used some of these clamps. You can get these from Certiflat. Those clamps I actually made from Harbor Freight clamps, so they were like $3 a clamp and cost me nothing. Cutting these on the bandsaw is a little tricky. It takes a while to get started, then it plows through the center, and then it takes a second to cut through the end. More than once I kicked the bandsaw blade off. More than a dozen times I would say I kicked the bandsaw blade off. It's easy to pop back on, but it's a little frustrating sometimes. So I mentioned previously, I'm using a different welder. I'm actually using an AHP Alpha TIG instead of the Miller Multimatic 215 that I normally use. To get that up and running, we're using CK Worldwide laser tungsten and a stubby torch kit. We're also using a couple different sizes of stainless steel filler wire provided by Weld Metals Online. If you need welding supplies, I highly recommend Weld Metals Online. They've got everything you need. They've got tungsten, they've got torch assemblies, torch bodies. I think they even have machines now, all of your different filler wires. And if you use promo code RECKLESS at checkout, you might save a couple bucks on that order. So check them out, weldmetalsonline.com. You won't be disappointed. The process for the driver's side is pretty much the same as the passenger side. The only real difference is that the exhaust ports sit 1 inch forward, and I wanted the collectors to be in the same place, so I had to make that up in the primaries. Now that we know both headers fit, we can fully weld them, add EGR bungs, V-bands, and also wrap up our steering shaft and engine travel limiters. But you'll have to catch all that on part 2. If you have questions or comments, drop them below. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe. Also, if you want to get a sneak peek of what's happening before we post the next video, check us out on Facebook and Instagram. That's it for this one, guys. I'll see you on the next video.